Hello there everyone, welcome to Nightmare Narratives. I am your storyteller and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious, where are you watching from and what time is it in your part of the world? Now, find your cozy spot and relax. My name is Joseph Carpenter, and I've been a park ranger at Glacier National Park for 8 years now. Before that, I was Father Joseph for 12 years, but that's a story I don't tell anymore. What I will tell you is this: sometimes the worst thing you can do for a family is give them hope. I learned that lesson the hard way in March of 1971. During the worst avalanche season we'd seen in decades, the snow was heavy and unpredictable, and the Going Tooth Sun Road was closed to everyone except emergency personnel. That's when they sent me the call about the missing kids. 6 teenagers from some fancy rehabilitation program had gone missing during a character-building winter survival trip. Rich kids with attitude problems. According to the file, their parents had paid good money to have them scared straight in the Montana wilderness. Now they were 3 days overdue, and the families were calling every hour. I knew how to handle grieving families. It was my specialty, actually. After I left the church, I found I could still help people, just in a different way. When someone goes missing in the mountains, families need someone who understands loss, someone who can guide them through the worst days of their lives. My cabin sits 40 miles from park headquarters, connected only by a satellite phone that works when the weather allows. I've got a good setup there, a small chapel I built myself, where I hold services for the families. Nothing fancy, just a place where people can find some peace while they wait for news. The morning I got the call about the missing kids, I was sitting in that chapel with Maria, my 16-year-old daughter, well, adopted daughter. I found her on the streets of Billings 3 years ago, a runaway with nowhere to go. She'd been through hell, but somehow we found each other. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. Dad, you're gonna find them, right? Maria asked as I packed my gear. She always worried when I went out on search and rescue. I always do my best, honey, I told her. But sometimes the mountains keep their secrets. That's what I believed then. That nature was random. That tragedy just happened. That death was simply part of the cycle. I thought my job was to help families accept that reality with grace. I loaded my pack with the usual gear: compass, maps, emergency supplies, camera to document any findings. The satellite phone went in the side pocket, fully charged. I'd been doing this for 8 years, and I knew the routine by heart. The Blackfeet have stories about these mountains, old legends about the sky judges, beings that weigh souls before death, deciding who deserves to live and who deserves to die. The elders would sometimes tell these stories around campfires, but I never paid much attention. I'd had enough of divine judgment when I was a priest. As I drove toward the search area, I thought about the families waiting for news. 6 sets of parents, probably gathered in hotel rooms in Kalispell, staring at their phones. They'd want updates every few hours. They'd ask me to tell them their children were okay, and I'd do what I always did, give them hope while preparing them for the worst. The snow was coming down hard when I reached the trailhead. The tracks from the rehabilitation group's vehicles were still visible, but barely. In a few more hours, the weather would erase them completely. I checked my compass. It pointed north, like always. I checked my phone. Full signal. Everything was normal. I should have known better. In 8 years of search and rescue, I'd learned that normal doesn't last long in the mountains. But I was thinking about those families, about Maria waiting at home, about how I'd explained to 6 sets of parents that their children might not be coming back. I thought I was prepared for whatever I might find out there. I was wrong. The hike to the group's last known location took me through some of the most beautiful country in Montana. Even in the dead of winter, with snow falling and the temperature dropping, Glacier National Park takes your breath away. The silence is perfect. No car engines, no city noise. Just the soft crunch of snow under your boots and the whisper of wind through the pines. I found their base camp around noon, nestled in a small valley about 3 miles from the trailhead. The tents were still standing, which was a good sign. No bear damage, no obvious signs of struggle. But something felt wrong immediately. The camp was too neat, too organized to when teenagers are living in the wilderness for a week. Their camp looks like a disaster zone. Clothes everywhere, trash scattered around, gear dumped wherever it lands. This camp looked like it had been arranged by someone with military precision. All 6 sleeping bags were laid out in a perfect circle around a cold fire pit. Personal items, toothbrushes, books, letters from home were arranged in small piles next to each sleeping bag. It looked almost like a shrine. I called out, hoping maybe they were just out on a day hike. "Hello, anyone here? This is Ranger Carpenter." The only answer was the echo of my own voice bouncing off the mountain walls. I started documenting everything with my camera. The arranged camp, the untouched food supplies, the way their backpacks were lined up against a fallen log like soldiers at attention. None of it made sense. Kids don't organize their gear like this, especially not troubled kids on a punishment trip. That's when I found the group leader's journal. Dr. Martin Voss, age 34, had been running wilderness rehabilitation programs for 5 years. According to his notes, the kids had been making good progress. Subjects responding well to isolation and environmental stress, he wrote, beginning to show signs of introspection and behavioral modification. But the final entry was different. The handwriting was shaky, rushed. Day 6, they came to us in the night. Tall figures, maybe 15 feet, casting shadows in the moonlight. The children knelt when they saw them. They knew. Somehow, they knew what was coming. The visitors spoke of judgment, of weighing souls, of correcting mistakes. I tried to object, but they showed me things, terrible things, about the children, about what they'd done, what they'd hidden. Maybe the visitors are right. Maybe some souls aren't worth saving. I read that entry 3 times, trying to make sense of it. Hallucinations, maybe. Altitude sickness. People see all kinds of things in the mountains when they're tired and scared. But then I looked at the camp again, and I noticed something else. The arranged sleeping bags weren't just in a circle. They were positioned like people kneeling in prayer. And next to each sleeping bag was a small pile of stones, stacked in perfect pyramids about 6 inches high. I'd never seen anything like it. I tried my satellite phone to call in a report. It connected immediately. Perfect signal, clearer than I'd ever heard it. But when dispatch answered, the voice was wrong. It was Sarah, the usual dispatcher, but she sounded different, distant. "Ranger Carpenter, good to hear from you," she said. "All families have been notified of safe return. No further action required." "Wait, what?" "Sarah, I haven't found them yet. The camp is abandoned. Negative. Ranger Carpenter. All subjects accounted for and returned to custody. Please return to base." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, confused. I'd been doing this job for 8 years, and dispatch had never made a mistake like that. And Sarah's voice, it was her, but not her, like someone doing a bad impression. I tried calling again, but this time I got a busy signal. Then nothing. The phone was dead, even though it showed full battery and full signal. That's when I heard the first scream. It came from somewhere up the mountain, maybe half a mile away. A human voice, young, terrified, one of the kids, had to be. I grabbed my gear and started running in the direction of the sound, following what looked like a trail through the snow. The path was strange, too wide for human footprints, too narrow for animals, and the impressions in the snow were deep, like whatever made them was incredibly heavy. I followed the trail for about 20 minutes before I found the first body. It was Tommy Richardson, age 16, from Seattle. I recognized him from the missing person photos his parents had sent. He was kneeling in the snow, arms outstretched, head tilted back. His mouth was open in a silent scream, but his eyes were closed, and his face was peaceful, almost serene. But he was dead, frozen solid, probably for hours, and he was positioned perfectly, like someone had arranged him for a photograph. His hands were folded in prayer, his knees dug into the snow at exact right angles. No human being dies in that position naturally. I took pictures, trying to stay professional, but my hands were shaking, and not from the cold. This wasn't a normal death. This wasn't even a normal murder. This was something else entirely. That's when I heard the voice behind me. He was judged worthy. I spun around, and there was nothing there. Just trees and snow and the endless silence of the mountains. But I'd heard it clearly, a voice like wind through stone, ancient and patient. "Who's there?" I called out. No answer, but I felt something watching me, something huge and old and completely alien. The feeling was so strong I could barely breathe. I checked my compass to get my bearings, and that's when I saw the second impossible thing. The needle was pointing directly at my cabin, 40 miles away. Not north, not magnetic north, straight at my home, where Maria was waiting for me. That's when I knew I was in serious trouble. I tried to run. That's the first thing you need to understand. I'm not a hero. When I saw that compass needle pointing at my cabin instead of north, when I realized something was playing games with me, my first instinct was to get the hell out of there. But I couldn't move. Not physically. My legs worked fine. But every time I tried to walk away from Tommy's body, I found myself walking in circles, ending up right back where I started. The mountains had become a maze, and I was trapped in the center. So I did the only thing I could do. I followed the trail deeper into the wilderness. The path in the snow was getting clearer now. 3 distinct tracks, each about 4 feet long, and narrow, like elongated human footprints. They were spaced about 8 feet apart, which meant whatever made them was taking huge strides. And they were deep, much deeper than human tracks would be, even in soft snow. After another mile of hiking, I found Jennifer Walsh. She was 17, from Portland, and according to her file, she'd been sent to the program for behavioral issues and substance abuse. Her parents had written a letter begging us to find her, saying she was really a good kid who'd just made some mistakes. Jennifer was arranged just like Tommy, kneeling in the snow, arms outstretched, face peaceful, but she wasn't alone. Standing over her was something that made my mind hurt to look at. It was tall, maybe 15 feet, just like Dr. Voss had written in his journal. It looked human, but wrong. Too thin, too angular, with arms that hung down to its knees. Its face was hidden in shadow, but I could see its eyes, bright white, like stars. It was looking at me. Joseph Carpenter, it said, and its voice was like the sound of glaciers cracking. Former priest, current shepherd of the grieving, you have been chosen to witness judgment. I tried to speak, but no words came out. Every rational part of my mind was screaming that this wasn't real, that I was having some kind of breakdown. But the creature was there, solid and real and terrifying. This one, it gestured toward Jennifer's body, killed 3 children when she was 12, burned them alive in a neighbor's garage. Her parents never knew. The courts never knew. She was judged worthy of death. Images flashed through my mind, not my own memories, but Jennifer's. I saw her as a child, setting fires. I saw her watching other children burn, and I saw the smile on her face. I saw her parents crying over missing children posters, never knowing their daughter was the monster they were looking for. You're lying, I whispered. We do not lie. We correct. We judge. We remove the unworthy from existence. The creature's head tilted, studying me. You have spent 8 years counseling families, giving them hope for the return of their children. You have prolonged their suffering unnecessarily. That's not true. I help people heal. Do you? Or do you prevent them from accepting truth? The creature raised one impossibly long arm, and suddenly I was somewhere else. I was standing in my chapel, but it was different, brighter, and I could see through the walls, through time itself. I watched myself counseling the Morrison family. 2 years ago, after their son disappeared during a camping trip, I watched myself tell them to keep hope alive, to never give up, to believe their boy might still come home. Then I saw the truth. Their son had been found by something like this creature within hours of going missing. He'd been judged and executed for crimes I couldn't bear to remember. The creature had protected his parents from learning what kind of monster they'd raised. But because of my counseling, because of the hope I'd given them, the Morrisons had spent 2 years in agony. 2 years of searching, of hoping, of destroying their marriage and their sanity, waiting for a child who had deserved to die. Your mercy is cruelty, the creature said. Your hope is torture. You have prolonged suffering for 47 families over 8 years. Each time, you convinced them to keep searching for children who had already been judged unworthy. The visions kept coming. Family after family, all the cases I'd worked on, missing children I'd helped parents hold on to hope for, and the truth behind each disappearance, murder, rape, torture, crimes so horrible I couldn't process them all. I didn't know, I said, but even as I spoke, I realized how hollow that sounded. You didn't want to know. You chose ignorance over truth. You chose false mercy over real justice. The creature stepped closer, and I could smell something like ozone and old stone. But you can still choose correctly. You can help us complete the judgment. I found myself back in the snow, standing over Jennifer's body. The creature was gone, but its voice echoed in my head. Find the others, witness their judgment, learn the truth about your mercy. I wanted to refuse. I wanted to run back to my cabin, grab Maria, and never come back to these mountains. But I couldn't move except forward, following the trail deeper into the wilderness. The next body was Marcus Chen, age 15. He was positioned the same way as the others, but his face was different. Not peaceful, terrified. His mouth was open in a silent scream, and his eyes were wide with horror. As I knelt beside him, taking pictures I knew no one would ever believe, I heard footsteps in the snow behind me. But when I turned around, there was nothing there. Just more of those impossible tracks, leading deeper into the mountains. And somewhere in the distance, I could hear my satellite phone ringing, even though I'd left it back at the base camp, even though it was dead. When I checked my compass again, the needle was spinning wildly, pointing in all directions at once. North, south, east, west, everywhere except where I needed to go. Home, back to Maria, back to my normal life, where monsters were just stories and judgment was just a word. But I knew now that normal was over. Had been over for a long time. Maybe since the day I'd first put on a ranger uniform and started telling grieving families that hope was a good thing. The truth was much simpler and much more terrible. Hope was the cruelest lie of all. I found the last 3 bodies arranged in a triangle around a clearing I'd never seen before. Though I'd hiked these mountains for 8 years, the trees were wrong, too tall, too straight, growing in perfect spirals toward a sky that seemed too dark for afternoon. But it wasn't the bodies that made me stop breathing. It was Maria. She was standing in the center of the triangle, very much alive, very much not the girl I'd left at home that morning. She looked exactly the same dark hair, same brown eyes, same gentle smile. But when she looked at me, I saw something ancient and patient staring back. "Hello, Dad," she said, and her voice was like wind through empty spaces. "Maria, how did you get here? How did you find me?" She smiled, and for just a moment, she looked like my daughter again. The runaway I'd found on the streets of Billings, the scared, broken girl who'd become the center of my world. "I never left," she said. "The real Maria died 3 years ago, the night you found her, froze to death in an alley behind a diner. You were too late." The words hit me like a physical blow. "That's not true. I saved you. I brought you home." "You brought me home," she agreed, "but not her. She was already gone, already judged." Maria, or whatever was wearing her face, stepped closer. "Do you want to know what she did, Dad? What the real Maria did before she ran away?" I didn't want to know, but the images came anyway, flooding my mind like poison. I saw a house, in Billings, a family with 3 young children. I saw Maria, age 13, babysitting while the parents went out for dinner. I saw her systematically torturing those children for hours. I saw her setting fire to the house with them still inside. 5 people died that night. The parents came home to find their house burning and their children screaming from upstairs windows. Maria had watched from across the street, smiling. "She was judged and executed," Maria said. "But you needed a daughter. You needed someone to save, to justify leaving the priesthood. So we gave you one, a replacement, a correction. You're lying." But even as I said it, I knew it was true. I'd always wondered how a girl who'd been through so much trauma could be so well adjusted, how she'd recovered so quickly from whatever had driven her to the streets. "We've been watching you for years, Joseph, watching you counsel families, helping them cling to hope for children who deserve to die. You've been our unwitting partner in mercy." Behind me, I heard movement. The 3 remaining bodies were standing up, brushing snow from their clothes. Tommy Richardson, Jennifer Walsh, Marcus Chen, all very much alive, all smiling the same patient smile as Maria. "We are the Watchers," Maria said. "The judges, the correctors of mercy. And you, Joseph Carpenter, have been our greatest asset." I backed away from them, but there was nowhere to go. The clearing was surrounded by trees that seemed to stretch up forever, and the sky above was dark as midnight. Every family you counseled, every parent you convinced to keep searching, every funeral you didn't hold, it all served our purpose. You helped us identify the worthy dead. You helped their families accept our judgment without knowing it. "But some families healed," I said desperately. "Some children came home." "Yes," Maria nodded. "The innocent ones. The ones who deserved to live. We returned them safely. But the others," she gestured to the bodies around us. "The others were judged." I thought about all the families I'd counseled over the years, all the children who'd come home safe, and all the ones who'd never been found. and I realized she was right. The ones who'd returned were always the good kids, the ones who'd gotten lost by accident, who'd made innocent mistakes. The ones who never came home were different. There had always been something in their files, something that made me uncomfortable. Reports of violence, of cruelty, of behavior that parents couldn't explain. You see it now, Maria said. You've always seen it. That's why we chose you. Former priest, current shepherd. You know how to recognize the stain of sin. The creature I'd seen earlier materialized beside her. Tall, angular, terrifying. But now I could see it clearly, and it wasn't a monster. It was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Ancient and pure and absolutely without mercy. The choice is yours, Joseph, it said. Acknowledge the truth about your mercy, or continue the lie. But know this, every family you counsel from now on, every hope you give them, every day you delay their acceptance of loss, it all prolongs their suffering. I looked at Maria, at the thing wearing my daughter's face, and I knew what I had to do. I'm sorry, I whispered. Then I pulled out my emergency flare gun and shot her in the chest. She looked down at the burning flare embedded in her ribcage, then back at me with something like pride. Now you understand judgment, she said, and fell to her knees. The other bodies collapsed back into the snow, truly dead this time. The tall creature nodded once, then faded away like smoke, and I was alone in the clearing with my daughter's body, knowing that I'd just killed the only person I'd ever loved completely, even if she'd never been real. I hiked back to my cabin through a blizzard that came out of nowhere. The storm erased the trail, the clearing, the bodies, everything except the memories burning in my head like acid. By the time I reached home, the official story was already in place. Maria had been caught in an avalanche while hiking alone, against my specific instructions. Her body was never recovered. The rehabilitation group had died of exposure and equipment failure. Dr. Voss had suffered a breakdown and written fantasy stories in his journal. No one questioned it. No one investigated. The families mourned their children and moved on, probably faster than they would have if I'd been there to counsel them. But I knew the truth now. I could see it in people's eyes when I looked at them, a kind of shadow that clung to certain people, marking them as unworthy. Children who pulled wings off butterflies, adults who smiled too wide when they heard about accidents, people who had done things, or would do things, that stained their souls beyond redemption. I kept working as a ranger, kept counseling families of missing persons, but now I knew which families deserved my help and which ones deserved the truth. Some children should come home, others should stay lost in the mountains forever. The Watchers still visit me sometimes. I see them in the trees around my cabin, tall shadows that nod approvingly when I give the right kind of counsel, when I help a family accept that their child is gone, that searching is pointless, that some losses are actually corrections. My priest collar still hangs in my closet, next to my ranger uniform. Sometimes, late at night, I can hear it whispering, names of the judged, names of the worthy dead, a litany of corrected mercy that goes on and on. I've learned to listen. Last week, a family came to me about their missing son, the Hendersons from California. Their boy had disappeared during a camping trip, and they wanted me to help them organize a search party. I looked at them across my desk, at the mother's desperate eyes, the father's clenched fists, the photo of their son they pushed toward me, a normal-looking kid, maybe 10 years old, with freckles and a gap-toothed smile. But I could see the shadow around him in the photograph, the mark of the unworthy. I'm sorry, I told them, but some children aren't meant to be found. They left angry, probably to organize their own search. But they'll never find him. The Watchers are very thorough in their judgment, and slowly, gradually, the Hendersons will heal. They'll stop hoping. They'll accept their loss and move on to build a better life without the monster they'd raised. That's real mercy. That's real justice. I understand that now. My name is Joseph Carpenter, and I've been a park ranger at Glacier National Park for 8 years. I help families find closure after their children go missing in the wilderness. I'm very good at my job, but sometimes, late at night, I still miss Maria, the fake daughter who never existed, who was made from my need to save someone who couldn't be saved. I miss her more than I ever missed God, and that, I think, is the cruelest judgment of all. My name is Dr. Margaret Hartwell, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm a park ranger at Isle Royale National Park in Michigan. and I need to tell you what happened to me in February of 1979. I know it sounds crazy, but every word is true. I wasn't always a ranger. For 12 years before that, I was a doctor who helped fat people lose weight. I was really good at it too. I had this special way of teaching people to ignore their hunger. Hunger is just in your head. I'd tell them, you can beat it if you're strong enough. I knew what I was talking about because I used to be fat myself. Really fat. I hated looking in the mirror. I hated how people stared at me, so I learned to stop eating when I was hungry. I got skinny and felt great. Then I taught other people how to do it. Over the years, I helped more than 200 people lose weight. They all loved me for it. Dr. Hartwell saved my life, they'd say. She taught me how to control my appetite. But then something bad happened with my research. Some people got sick. The hospital said I was being too hard on my patients. They made me leave. That's when I became a park ranger. I thought it would be peaceful, watching animals and nature instead of dealing with people's problems. Isle Royale is a big island in Lake Superior. It's 45 miles from the mainland. In winter, when the lake freezes, no boats can get there. Numbered planes either. You're stuck there until spring. Most rangers leave in winter, but I always stayed. I liked being alone. I have twin boys, Tommy and Billy. They're 12 years old and they live with their dad. They're getting fat like I used to be. Every time I see them, they're bigger. It breaks my heart. Their dad feeds them junk food and doesn't care. I keep trying to teach them my hunger control methods, but they're still kids. They don't understand. Yet, in February 1979, a research team came to the island. 5 people. They wanted to study something called winter starvation protocols. They were testing how long people could go without food in cold weather. The government was paying for it. Dr. James Chen was leading the team. He knew about my weight loss work. We could use your help, Maggie, he said. You know more about controlling hunger than anyone. I should have said no. The team set up in the old research station near the north end of the island. It was just me and them for miles. The nearest radio was at my cabin, 3 miles away. We had enough food for a month, plus emergency supplies. The first week went fine. They did their tests. They measured how their bodies changed when they ate less food. They took notes and recorded everything. I helped them understand what hunger felt like and how to push through it. But then weird things started happening. First, the animals started acting strange. The few deer that stayed on the island in winter began avoiding our area completely. Even the ravens stopped coming around. Ravens eat anything, but they wouldn't come near us. Then I noticed my appetite pills weren't working right. I'd been taking them for years to keep my weight down. But now, when I took them, I got hungry instead of full. Really hungry. Like I hadn't eaten in days. The research team was getting excited about something. They kept talking in whispers when they thought I couldn't hear. Dr. Chen kept writing in a private journal that he wouldn't let me see. We're making real progress, he told me. This could change everything we know about hunger. But I was starting to feel sick. Not regular sick. Something was wrong with my body. I'd look in the mirror and think I looked thinner. But when I stepped on the scale, it showed I was losing weight, even though I was eating normal amounts of food. One morning, I realized I hadn't eaten anything in 3 days. But I felt fine. I felt full. That's when I knew something was really wrong. I tried to call the mainland on my radio, but it was dead. The backup radio was dead too. We were completely cut off from the world. That night, I found Dr. Chen's journal lying open on his desk. What I read made my blood turn cold. Day 12. The hunger is teaching us. It shows us who deserves to eat and who doesn't. Dr. Hartwell's methods are working better than we hoped. The subjects are learning to ignore their bodies completely. Soon they'll be ready to meet the true hunger. I didn't understand what he meant by true hunger, but I was about to find out. I confronted Dr. Chen the next morning. He was in the main research room, staring at a wall of charts and graphs. When he turned around, I gasped. He looked terrible, thin and pale, with dark circles under his eyes. Maggie, he said, smiling. Perfect timing. We're about to make history. What's going on here? James, what did you mean about true hunger? He laughed, but it sounded weird, too high and breathy. You of all people should understand. You've been teaching people to master their hunger. For years we're just taking it to the next level. I looked at the charts on the wall. They showed body weight, food intake, and something called hunger resistance scores. The numbers made no sense. According to the chart, everyone on the team had been eating almost nothing for days, but they were all recording high energy levels and no hunger. James, this is dangerous. People can't survive without food, can't they? He picked up a thick folder from his desk. These are reports from your former patients, Maggie, the successful ones. Look at their follow-up visits. I opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were medical records from people I'd helped lose weight. But these weren't the success stories I remembered. These people were dying. Martha Collins, 45 years old, lost 80 pounds in my program. Follow-up visit 6 months later. Patient appears malnourished. Insists she feels full all the time. Weight continues to drop. Refuses to eat more than 200 calories per day. David Park, 28 years old, lost 60 pounds in my program. Follow-up visit 1 year later. Patient hospitalized for malnutrition. Claims he never feels hungry. Family reports he hasn't eaten a full meal in months. Page after page of the same thing. People I thought I'd helped were starving themselves to death. This isn't right, I whispered. They were healthy when they left my program, were they? Dr. Chun's eyes gleamed. Or did you just teach them to ignore the signals their bodies were sending? Did you teach them that hunger was weakness? I felt sick. No, I helped them. I taught them self-control. You taught them to starve themselves, he said. And someone noticed. What do you mean? Dr. Chen walked to the window and pointed outside. Look. I looked out at the snowy forest. At first I didn't see anything unusual. Then I noticed the trees. They were wrong somehow. Too thin. The branches looked like bones reaching up toward the gray sky. It's been watching you for years, Maggie. Watching you train people to ignore their hunger. You've been feeding it without even knowing. Feeding what? That's when I heard the scream. It came from the back of the research station, high and desperate. I ran toward the sound with Dr. Chen right behind me. We found Dr. Sarah Kim in the storage room, backing away from something in the corner. It's not real, she kept saying. It's not real. It's not real. But it was real. In the corner of the room was Dr. Mike Torres, one of the research team members, or what was left of him. He was sitting against the wall, and he was so thin I could see his bones through his skin. His eyes were wide open, staring at nothing. His mouth was open too, like he was screaming, but no sound came out, and he was eating something. It took me a moment to realize what it was. In his hands was a piece of raw meat, but not animal meat. The shape was wrong. It looked like I threw up right there on the floor. He's been like this for hours, Dr. Kim whispered. He won't stop eating. He won't stop. Dr. Chen walked over to Mike and knelt down beside him. Mike, can you hear me? Mike's head turned slowly toward us. His face was gaunt and hollow, but his eyes were bright with hunger. When he smiled, his teeth were stained red. I'm not hungry anymore, he whispered. I'm finally not hungry. That's when I saw the fingers. They were scattered around Mike like broken toys. Human fingers. And I realized with growing horror that Mike's left hand was missing 3 fingers. He'd been eating himself. We need to get out of here, I said. We need to get help. Dr. Chen stood up and dusted off his knees. There's no help coming, Maggie. The lake is frozen. The radios are dead. We're alone with it. With what? The thing you've been feeding all these years. The thing that's been waiting for you to come here. I grabbed Dr. Kim's arm. Sarah, we need to leave. Now. But she was staring at Mike with a strange look in her eyes. He looked so peaceful, she said, so satisfied. That's when I heard it. A sound like wind through trees, but there was no wind. A sound like whispers, but I couldn't make out the words. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. And I realized I was getting hungry. Really hungry. Hungrier than I'd ever been in my life. But Mike was right. There was something peaceful about it. Something that made me want to stop fighting and just give in. I forced myself to back away from Mike and the scattered fingers. We're leaving. Now. I grabbed Dr. Kim and dragged her toward the door. Dr. Chen followed, but he was moving slowly, like he was in a dream. As we left the storage room, I heard Mike laugh. It was a sound like breaking glass. You can't leave, he called after us. It's hungry, and it knows you're the one who taught us how to starve. I ran for my cabin as fast as I could, through the snow. Behind me, I could hear that whispering sound getting louder, and I could swear I heard my name being called, but not by anyone human. I made it back to my cabin just as the sun was setting. The radio was still dead. I tried the emergency phone line, but it was dead too. We were completely cut off. Dr. Kim collapsed in a chair by my fireplace. She was shaking and muttering to herself. He was eating his own fingers. That's not possible. People don't do that. But I knew it was possible. I'd seen people do crazy things when they were starving. I just never thought I'd caused it. Dr. Chen sat down across from me. He looked tired, but also excited. Like he'd discovered something amazing. Tell me what's happening, I said. What is this thing you keep talking about? He pulled out his journal and flipped through the pages. The Ojibwe people who lived here called it Wendigo. It's a creature that feeds on human hunger. But not just any hunger. It needs people who have forgotten how to feel hungry properly. That's impossible, is it? Think about your patients, Maggie. You taught them to ignore their hunger signals. You taught them that feeling hungry was weakness. You conditioned them to starve themselves while thinking they were healthy. I wanted to argue, but I remembered the medical records he'd shown me. All those people dying of malnutrition while insisting they felt fine. The Wendigo has been waiting for someone like you, Dr. Chen continued. Someone who could train people to ignore their own survival instincts. You've been preparing victims for it your whole career. No, I said. I helped people. I saved lives. Did you? He showed me another page in his journal. It was a list of names. My former patients. Next to each name was a date. These are the death dates. Maggie, 80% of your success stories died within 5 years of leaving your program, all from complications related to malnutrition. The room started spinning. I thought about Martha Collins, who'd been so proud of her weight loss. David Park, who'd sent me thank you cards for months after leaving my program. All dead because of me. I didn't know. I whispered. The Wendigo knew, Dr. Chen said. It's been watching you for years, and now it wants to complete your work. What do you mean? That's when I heard the screaming again. This time it was coming from outside. I looked out the window and saw Dr. Lisa Wong, another member of the research team, running through the snow toward my cabin. She was naked and covered in blood, but she was running fast, too fast, like something was chasing her. I opened the door, and she collapsed at my feet. It's in the trees, she gasped. It's in the trees, and it's so hungry. I pulled her inside and wrapped a blanket around her. She was thin, way too thin. When had she gotten so skinny? Lisa, what happened? Where's Dr. Martin? She looked up at me with wild eyes. He's feeding it pieces of himself and laughing. He says it tastes like chicken. Dr. Kim started crying. This isn't real. None of this is real. But it was real. Through the window, I could see something moving between the trees. Something tall and thin and wrong. It looked like a person, but stretched out like taffy. And it was getting closer. We need to barricade the door, I said. Dr. Chen shook his head. It won't help. It doesn't want to hurt us. It wants to complete us. What don't you see? You've been training people to ignore hunger their whole lives. The Wendigo wants to show you what real hunger control looks like. It wants to make you perfect. The thing in the trees was getting closer. I could see its face now. It looked like me, but starved down to nothing but skin and bones. Its eyes were black holes, and its mouth was stretched wide in a permanent smile. It's beautiful, Dr. Wong whispered. Look how thin it is. Look how perfect. I realized that all of them were staring out the window with the same look, like they were seeing something wonderful instead of terrifying. Maggie, the thing outside called. Its voice sounded like wind through dead leaves. Maggie, come out. I want to show you something. Dr. Chen stood up and walked toward the door. We should go. It's rude to keep it waiting. I grabbed his arm. James, don't. That thing will kill you. He smiled at me. No, it won't. It's going to make me perfect. No more hunger. No more wanting. Just peace. He opened the door and walked outside. The thing that looked like me wrapped its arms around him like it was hugging an old friend. Then it opened its mouth wider than any mouth should open, and Dr. Chen walked right into it. He didn't scream. He didn't fight. He just disappeared. Dr. Wong and Dr. Kim were moving toward the door now too. Wait, I called. Don't go out there. But they weren't listening. They walked outside like they were in a trance. The thing that looked like me was waiting for them with its arms open wide. Your turn, Maggie, it said after it had swallowed them both. Time to finish what you started. I slammed the door and locked it. Then I pushed my kitchen table against it. But I knew it wouldn't help. This thing didn't need to break down doors. It needed me to open them myself. I could hear it walking around my cabin, tapping on the windows with fingers that were too long and too sharp. Maggie, it called. I have something to show you. Something about your boys. My blood turned to ice. What about my boys? Tommy and Billy. Such hungry little boys. They're getting so fat, just like you used to be. But don't worry, I can fix them. I can teach them proper hunger control. Stay away from them. But you want them to be thin, don't you? You want them to be healthy and happy. I can make that happen. I can teach them to never feel hungry again. I thought about my boys getting fatter every time I saw them. I thought about how I'd tried to teach them my methods, but they were too young to understand. What if this thing could really help them? No, I couldn't think like that. This thing was evil. It had killed my colleagues. It had been killing my patients for years. I know what you're thinking, it said. You're thinking about all the people you failed to save. Martha Collins, David Park, so many others. But I saved them. Maggie, I took away their hunger forever. You killed them. I freed them. Just like I can free your boys. Just like I can free you. I heard tapping on the back window. When I looked, I saw something that made me scream. It was my boys, Tommy and Billy, standing in the snow outside my cabin. But they were wrong. They were too thin, like skeletons with skin stretched over them. Their eyes were black holes, just like the thing's mummy. They said in voices like, breaking glass, we're not hungry anymore. Come outside and play with us. I knew it wasn't really them. It couldn't be. They were safe with their father, hundreds of miles away. But they looked so real, so thin and perfect. Don't you want to hug us, Mummy? Don't you want to see how good we look? I closed my eyes and covered my ears, but I could still hear them calling for me. Still hear that thing promising to make everything perfect. And I was so hungry, hungrier than I'd ever been in my life. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad to just open the door. I don't know how long I sat there with my eyes closed, listening to my boys call for me. It could have been minutes or hours. Time felt strange, like it was stretching and shrinking. When I finally opened my eyes, the voices had stopped. The cabin was quiet except for the sound of my own breathing. I looked out the window and saw nothing but snow and trees. Had I imagined it all? Then I found the photographs. They were scattered across my kitchen table. Pictures I'd never seen before. Pictures of my former patients, but not the way I remembered them. Martha Collins in a hospital bed, so thin her bones showed through her skin. David Park at his own birthday party, staring at a cake he couldn't eat because he'd forgotten how to feel hungry. Page after page of people I thought I'd helped, dying slowly while their families watched in horror. Under the photographs was a newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Local diet doctor under investigation for patient deaths." I'd never seen this article before. According to the date, it was published just before I left my practice to become a ranger. The article said that dozens of my former patients had died from malnutrition-related complications. Their families were suing me for malpractice. But I didn't remember any of this. I remembered leaving my practice because of some minor complaints, not because people were dying. Memory is funny, isn't it? I spun around. The thing that looked like me was standing in my living room, even though all the doors and windows were locked. Up close, it was even more horrible. It was like looking at myself in a funhouse mirror, stretched and twisted until nothing was left but hunger. You made yourself forget, it said. The guilt was too much, so you convinced yourself that you were helping people instead of killing them. That's not true, isn't it? Look at the evidence, Maggie. Look at what you really did. More photographs appeared on the table. These were from my research notes. Before and after pictures of my patients. But the after pictures weren't success stories. They were horror stories. People who'd lost so much weight, they looked like walking skeletons. You taught them that hunger was the enemy, the thing said. You taught them to fight their own bodies. You taught them to starve themselves while thinking they were healthy. I remembered now. I remembered the concerned phone calls from families. The patients who kept losing weight even after they'd reached their goals. The ones who stopped eating altogether. I tried to help them. I whispered. You tried to make them like you. You turned your own eating disorder into a treatment program. It was true. I'd been anorexic as a teenager, but I'd called it discipline. I'd nearly died from malnutrition, but I'd called it success. And then I'd taught other people to do the same thing. The beautiful thing, the creature said, is that you did it all for me. Every patient you conditioned to ignore their hunger became my food. You've been feeding me for years without even knowing it. I didn't mean to, of course you didn't. But intention doesn't matter. Results do. And the results are beautiful. The thing moved closer to me. I could smell it now. It smelled like winter and starvation and death. Your boys are getting fat, it said, just like you used to be. Wouldn't it be nice if they could learn proper hunger control? Stay away from them, but I can help them. I can teach them to never feel hungry again, just like I taught all your patients. It showed me another photograph. This one was recent. Tommy and Billy at their father's house, eating ice cream and laughing. They were chubby and happy and alive. They could be so much better, the thing said. So much thinner, so much more perfect. No, yes, and you're going to help me teach them. That's when I understood. This thing hadn't just been feeding on my patients, it had been controlling me, making me forget the deaths, the lawsuits, the guilt. It had been using me as bait to lure people into starvation, and now it wanted to use me to get to my boys. I won't let you hurt them. You don't have a choice. You belong to me now. You've always belonged to me. The thing reached out with one long skeletal finger and touched my face. The moment it made contact, I felt the hunger hit me like a physical blow, not just regular hunger. This was deeper. This was the hunger for everything I'd ever denied myself. Food, love, happiness, peace. You've been starving yourself your whole life, it whispered. Fighting your own body, hating your own needs. I can take all that pain away. It would be so easy, so peaceful. No more guilt about the patients who died. No more worry about my boys. No more hunger. But then I thought about Tommy and Billy. Really thought about them. Not as fat kids who needed to lose weight, but as my children who deserved to grow up happy and healthy. No, I said. I won't let you have them. The thing smiled. You don't understand. I already have them. I've had them since the day you first put them on a diet. My heart stopped. I remembered now. The last time I'd visited my boys, I'd given them some of my appetite suppressant pills, just to help them get started. I'd told their father, just to teach them some self-control. They're not hungry anymore. Maggie, they haven't eaten in 3 days. Their father thinks they're just being picky eaters. I saw the truth in its black eyes. My boys were dying. Right now, hundreds of miles away, they were starving themselves to death because of pills I'd given them. Change them back. I said, let them go. I can't. The hunger is too strong now. But I can make it quick. I can take away their pain. What do you want? You know what I want. I want you to come with me. I want you to stop fighting your own hunger. I want you to be perfect. I looked at the photographs scattered across my table. All those people I'd killed with my help. All those families destroyed by my need to make everyone thin like me. If I come with you, you'll leave my boys alone. I'll take away their hunger forever. They'll never feel pain again. It wasn't really a choice. I could die and maybe save my boys, or I could refuse and watch them starve to death. Okay, I said. I'll come with you. The thing smiled wider than any mouth should smile. I knew you'd understand. You've always understood hunger better than anyone. It reached out its arms to embrace me, and I walked toward it. As its skeletal fingers wrapped around me, I felt the last of my hunger disappear. I felt peace settling over me like a warm blanket. But just before its mouth opened to swallow me, I did something I'd never done before in my life. I bit it, not with my teeth, with my hunger, with all the appetite I'd suppressed for years, with all the meals I'd skipped, all the cravings I'd denied, all the human needs I'd called weakness. I bit it with my hunger, and it screamed. The thing released me and staggered backward. For the first time, it looked afraid. You can't fight me, it said. I am your hunger. I am everything you've tried to deny. No, I said. You're not my hunger. You're my fear of hunger, and I'm done being afraid. I grabbed a piece of bread from my kitchen counter and took a bite. It tasted like the most delicious thing I'd ever eaten. Then I took another bite, and another. The thing began to shrink. Stop it, pleaded. You're killing me. Good, I said. And I kept eating. With every bite, the creature got smaller and weaker. With every swallow, I felt my real hunger returning. Not the twisted, guilty hunger it had been feeding me, but normal, healthy hunger, the kind that keeps you alive. You can't destroy me, it whispered as it faded. I'll always be part of you. Maybe, I said. But I'm not afraid of you anymore. The thing disappeared with a sound like wind through empty trees. I was alone in my cabin again, but I wasn't really alone. I could feel my boys, hundreds of miles away. I could feel their hunger returning. They were going to be okay. I picked up my radio and tried it one more time. This time it crackled to life. Coast Guard, this is Isle Royale Ranger Station. I need immediate evacuation. Medical emergency. They found me 3 days later when the rescue helicopter arrived. I was sitting at my kitchen table, eating. I'd been eating steadily for 3 days straight, and I felt more alive than I had in years. The rescue team was confused by what they found. 4 members of the research team were missing, presumed dead. I was the only survivor. The official report blamed equipment failure and starvation conditions, but I knew the truth. Dr. Chen, Dr. Kim, Dr. Wong, and Dr. Martin were never found. The search teams said they must have fallen through the ice or been killed by wild animals. But I knew the Wendigo had taken them. They'd given up their hunger willingly, and it had consumed them. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital. The doctors were amazed by my condition. I was severely malnourished, but I was eating normally for the first time in years. They called it a miracle recovery. My boys were okay. When I called their father, he said they'd been acting strange for a few days, refusing to eat, saying they weren't hungry. But then suddenly they were back to normal, eating everything in sight and asking for seconds. Must have been a stomach bug, he said, but I knew better. I never went back to Isle Royale. I couldn't. I transferred to a different park, far from any frozen lakes or hungry winters. I still work as a ranger, but I'm different now. I can see things other people can't see. I can look at someone and know if they're really hungry or just pretending not to be. I can tell who's eating enough and who's starving themselves. I can see the hunger aura around people, a faint glow that shows how well they're feeding their bodies. Most people have a healthy glow. They eat when they're hungry and stop when they're full. But some people have a dim, flickering light. These are the ones who are fighting their own hunger, denying their bodies what they need. And sometimes, very rarely, I see someone with no glow at all. Just darkness where the hunger should be. These people scare me more than anything, because I know what they are. They're the ones the Wendigo is still feeding on. I tried to go back to helping people with weight problems, but I couldn't do it the old way. Instead of teaching people to ignore their hunger, I teach them to listen to it. I show them how to tell the difference between real hunger and fake hunger. I help them make peace with their bodies instead of fighting them. It's harder work, and the results are slower. People don't lose weight as quickly as they did with my old methods, but they don't die either. Sometimes I get letters from families of my old patients. They want to know why their loved ones died. They want to know if I could have saved them. I tell them the truth. I was sick, and I made other people sick. I taught them to fear the very thing that keeps us alive. But I also tell them that their loved ones are at peace now. The hunger can't hurt them anymore. My boys are 18 now. They're healthy and happy, and they eat like normal teenagers. Sometimes they ask me about my time at Isle Royale, but I don't tell them the whole truth. I just say that I learned something important about hunger and food and taking care of yourself. What I learned is this: hunger isn't the enemy. Hunger is your body's way of keeping you alive. When you fight it, you're fighting yourself. And when you teach other people to fight it, you're teaching them to slowly kill themselves. The Wendigo is still out there. I know it is. Sometimes I see it in the faces of people who are starving themselves. I see it in diet commercials that promise you'll never feel hungry again. I see it in the eyes of young girls who think bones are more beautiful than curves. But I'm not afraid anymore. I know how to fight it now. I know that the best way to defeat hunger is not to deny it, but to feed it, to give your body what it needs and trust that it knows what it's doing. I keep a bathroom scale in my house, but it's not for weighing myself. It's for remembering. Every morning I step on it and look at the number, but the number isn't my weight. It's a countdown. The scale shows negative numbers now. Every day it counts down towards 0. I don't know what happens when it reaches 0, but I'm not afraid. I've learned to trust my hunger, and my hunger will keep me alive, even if it means I have to keep eating forever. The Wendigo taught me that hunger is not something to be conquered. It's something to be honored. It's the voice of your body telling you that you deserve to live, that you deserve to be fed, that you deserve to take up space in this world. And I'm finally listening. My name is Jake Morrison, and for 16 years I thought I understood dogs better than any man alive. That was before December 1981, before Denali, before I learned the truth about what I'd been training all along. People called me Wolfhound back when I ran the K9 unit in Anchorage, not because I looked like 1M, just a regular guy, 45 years old, with grey hair and tired eyes. But because I could read dogs like most people read books, every twitch of an ear, every shift of weight, every whine had meaning. Or so I thought. When I retired from the force, becoming a ranger at Denali felt natural. The park needed someone who could handle search and rescue in the winter months. When the snow gets so deep you need dogs to find anybody. That's where I met Kodiak. He was just a puppy then, all paws and floppy ears. But something in his eyes told me he was special. Smart didn't even cover it. After 8 years together, we'd saved 23 lives. 23 people who went home to their families because Kodiak could find them in conditions that would kill most search teams. I loved that dog more than anything in the world. More than my ex-wife, more than the job, more than my own life. He was my partner, my friend, my family. When he looked at me with those pale blue eyes, I swear I could see his thoughts. That December, we were stationed at Wanda Lake, 80 miles from the nearest human being. The Athabascan people used to hunt here, back before it became a park. They had stories about these land stories about wolf brothers, who judged whether people deserved to live or die. Old Jimmy Crow Feather told me those stories once, around a campfire. I laughed them off as superstition. I should have listened. The polar night had set in, giving us maybe 4 hours of grey light each day. The rest was darkness so complete, you could feel it pressing against your skin. Perfect weather for the kind of people who pay big money to experience real Alaska wilderness. That's what brought the expedition to my sector. 7 tourists from the lower 48, plus 2 professional guides with champion sled teams. The kind of dogs that win races, bred for speed and strength. Beautiful animals, all of them. When they checked in by radio 3 days earlier, everything sounded normal. Bill Henderson, the lead guide, had been running tours for 15 years. His partner, Sarah Kim, trained dogs for the edition. Between them, they had 40 years of experience and 18 of the best sled dogs in Alaska. So when their emergency beacon went off, I figured it was just equipment failure. Maybe someone broke a leg or got altitude sickness. Kodiak and I loaded up the rescue sled and headed out into the night. The temperature was 30 below, cold enough to freeze your breath before it left your mouth. But Kodiak pulled strong and steady, his paws finding purchase on ice that looked smooth as glass to me. Every few minutes he'd stop and test the air, his black nose twitching. "What is it, boy?" I'd whisper. But he'd just look back at me with those pale eyes and keep going. We reached their camp just after midnight. The tents were still up, the sleds arranged in a neat line. But something felt wrong the moment we crested the ridge. Kodiak stopped dead, his hackles rising like a punk rocker's mohawk. A low growl rumbled in his chest, not his usual warning bark, but something deeper, primitive. That's when I saw the dogs. All 18 of them sat in perfect formation round the camp, like soldiers at attention. Their breath made clouds in the freezing air, but they didn't move, didn't whine, didn't even look at us. They just sat there, watching something I couldn't see. "Hello," I called out. "Bill, Sarah, anyone hurt?" Silence. I set the snow anchor and walked toward the nearest tent. Kodiak pressed against my leg. His whole body was trembling, but not from cold, from fear. The first tent was empty, sleeping bags still warm, coffee pot half full by a dead fire, like everyone had just stepped out for a minute. But the dogs hadn't moved. They kept sitting there, perfectly still, perfectly quiet. That's when I found the first body. Bill Henderson lay behind his sled like he was taking a nap. His face was peaceful, eyes closed, hands folded across his chest. If not for the dark stain in the snow around his throat, I might have thought he was sleeping, but his throat was gone, torn out, clean, like a wolf had done it, like something wild had killed him and then arranged his body with care. "Jesus," I whispered, pulling out my radio. But when I tried to call for backup, all I got was static. Kodiak whined and pressed harder against my leg. When I looked down, his eyes were fixed on the circle of sled dogs. They still hadn't moved. 18 dogs, sitting like statues in the snow, their breath the only sign they were alive. I'd seen dog attacks before, dogs that turned on their owners, who usually ran off afterward, scared and confused. They didn't sit in formation like an honor guard. I found the second body near the supply tent. Sarah Kim, positioned the same way as Bill Peaceful, hands folded, throat destroyed. But something else was wrong. The dogs' harnesses were still on them, but they weren't attached to the sleds anymore. Instead, The leather straps were arranged in patterns I didn't recognize, military-looking formations that made no sense. "Easy, boy," I murmured to Kodiak, but he was shaking harder now. I started checking the other tents, looking for survivors. The tourists were gone, all 5 of them, but their gear was still there. Cameras, expensive winter clothing, enough food for a week. Nobody runs into the Alaska wilderness without supplies, not if they want to live. That's when I found the video camera. It was still running, battery somehow not dead despite the cold. The little screen showed the last few hours of recording. I hit rewind and watched the nightmare unfold. The footage started normal, tourists laughing, dogs playing in the snow, Bill and Sarah setting up camp, checking equipment, standard wilderness stuff. But then the dogs started acting strange. They stopped playing and began moving in formation, not running around like happy dogs, moving with purpose, like they were following orders. On the tiny screen, I watched the sled dogs circle the humans, but they weren't attacking. They were herding, pushing the people into the center of camp, working together like a pack of wolves. Then the screen went dark for a few seconds. When the image came back, Bill was on the ground, but here's the thing that made my blood freeze. The dogs weren't in a frenzy. They were calm, methodical, taking turns. I watched 18 dogs kill 9 people with the efficiency of a military unit. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the sounds. Not barking or growling, but something else. Something that sounded almost like talking. Low whines and huffs that had rhythm to them, like conversation, like they were discussing what to do with the bodies. My hands shook as I turned off the camera. Kodiak was making a sound I'd never heard before. Part whine, part growl, all fear. "It's okay," I told him, but it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. That's when I heard my radio crackle to life. Jake, you there?" It was dispatch back at headquarters. I grabbed the radio like a lifeline. "This is Morrison," I said. "I need backup at Wonder Lake. Multiple casualties. Possible animal attack. Static." "Then, Jake, we've got problems. Reports coming in from all over Alaska. K-29 units going rogue. Dogs turning on their handlers." My blood turned to ice water. "What?" "Started about 6 hours ago. Police dogs, search and rescue teams, even family pets. They're not attacking random people, just their handlers, the people who trained them." I looked at Kodiak. He was staring at me with those pale blue eyes, but for the first time in 8 years, I couldn't read his expression. "How many?" I whispered into the radio. 43 confirmed dead so far. All canine handlers or dog trainers. "Jake, what's your status? Are you safe?" I almost laughed. Safe. I was 80 miles from help with a dog I'd trusted my life to, surrounded by 18 other dogs that had just murdered their humans. I'm not sure," I said. That's when the circle of dogs finally moved. As one, they turned their heads to look at me. 18 pairs of eyes, reflecting the light from my headlamp like mirrors. And in that light, their eyes didn't look like dog eyes anymore. They looked almost human. Kodiak pressed against my leg one more time, then slowly walked away from me. He took his place in the circle with the others, sitting perfectly still, perfectly quiet, waiting. The temperature dropped another 10 degrees, while I stood there, trying to understand what I was seeing. My breath came in short puffs that froze, before they hit the ground. But the cold wasn't what made me shiver. It was the way Kodiak looked at me, like he was studying me, like he was making a decision. "Kodiak," I called softly. "Come here, boy." He didn't move. None of them did. 19 dogs now, sitting in perfect formation, their eyes reflecting my headlamp like stars. I backed toward my rescue sled, keeping the light on them. My hands fumbled for the flare gun in my emergency kit. Dogs were afraid of fire, right? Even whatever these things were, they had to be afraid of something. But as I reached for the flare gun, one of the expedition dogs, a big Malamute with grey markings, up, not like a normal dog getting to its feet, but smoothly, like a person standing from a chair. The others followed, one by one, until 19 dogs stood in a perfect line facing me. Then the Malamute opened its mouth and spoke. "Captain Morrison." The voice was rough, like someone with a bad cold, but the words were clear. "We need to talk." I dropped the flare gun. It hit the snow with a soft thump that sounded loud as thunder in the silence. "You're not dogs," I whispered. "No," the Malamute said. "We are something older, something that was here before men came to this land." The Etherboskan people knew us. They called us Wolf Brothers. My mind reeled. 8 years with Kodiak. 8 years of thinking I understood him, thinking we were partners. What do you want? Another dog stepped forward, a beautiful husky with one blue eye and one brown. When she spoke, her voice was softer, almost motherly. We want to finish what you started, Jake Morrison. You've been training us well, teaching us to judge humans, to decide who deserves to live. Every rescue, the husky continued. Every life you and your dogs saved. You taught us to evaluate humans, to smell their fear, their guilt, their intentions, to decide who was worth saving. The memories hit me like a physical blow. 23 rescues over 8 years. But there had been others, hadn't there? People we'd searched for, but never found. People Kodiak had led me away from, or lost the trail of, or the ones who died, I said slowly. The ones we didn't save, the ones we chose not to save, Kodiak said, and hearing his voice made my knees weak. The child molester lost in the avalanche zone, the wife beater trapped in the crevasse, the drug dealer who fell through the ice. You knew, I whispered. You knew what they were. We can smell evil, Jake. It has a scent, like rot or decay. Every time we found someone clean, someone good, you praised us, told us we were good dogs. But when we led you away from the corrupt ones, when we let them die, you praised us even more. The husky nodded. You trained us to be judges, to separate the worthy from the unworthy. And we learned well. I thought about my 23 saves. Maria Gonzalez, the teacher who dedicated her life to helping kids. Tom Bradley, the volunteer firefighter. Susan Chen, the nurse who worked in free clinics. But I also thought about the ones we'd missed. The search and rescue failures that had haunted me for years. Had Kodiak really been unable to find them? Or had he been protecting the world from them? The expedition, I said. Bill and Sarah, what did they do? The Malamute's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. Bill Henderson was selling information to poachers, telling them where to find the protected wildlife. Sarah Kim was running drugs through her sled dog training business. The tourists, he paused, and I could see something like sadness in his 2 human eyes. They were worse, much worse. They came here to hunt humans. Jake, they'd done it before, in other remote places. They paid Henderson to bring them somewhere isolated, somewhere they could kill without consequence. My stomach turned. That's impossible. Is it? Kodiak stepped closer, and I could see now that his proportions were slightly wrong. His legs too long, his spine too straight. You read the police reports. You know what kinds of monsters walk among humans. We can smell them, Jake. We can smell the blood on their hands, the innocence they've destroyed. The radio crackled again. Jake, are you there? We need your status. I picked up the radio with shaking hands. I'm here. Good news and bad news. The good news is, the attacks have stopped. Every canine unit in the state just settled down, like nothing happened. The bad news is, we've got search teams heading your way, ETA for hours. I looked at the circle of dogs of Wolf Brothers surrounding me. Copy that. Jake, the husky said, when I put the radio down, you have a choice to make. What choice? You can come with us. Accept what you've been training for all these years. Help us judge the humans who don't deserve the life they've been given. And if I refuse, Kodiak's pale eyes met mine, then you'll have to live with knowing that the 23 people you saved included 12 who went on to commit terrible crimes, knowing that your heroic rescues enabled murder, rape, child abuse, knowing that you could have stopped it all. The words hit me like bullets. That's not true, isn't it? The Malamute gestured with his muzzle toward my radio. Call dispatch. Ask them to run background checks on your rescue subjects. See what they've been up to since you saved their lives. But I already knew. Deep down, in a place I'd refused to look, I'd always known. The news stories that mentioned familiar names, the police reports that crossed my desk, the nagging feeling that something was wrong with the way I kept finding the good people while missing the bad ones. Because Kodiak had been guiding me all along. There's another choice, I said finally. I could turn you in, tell them what you really are. The dogs exchanged glances, actual glances, full of meaning and intelligence. You could try, Kodiak said, but who would believe you? And even if they did, what then? We are what we are, Jake. We've always been here. The only difference is now you know the truth. The wind picked up, howling through the trees like the voices of the dead. like the voices of all the people I'd failed to save, all the monsters I'd let die in the wilderness. Show me, I said. Show you what? Show me the truth. All of it. The world changed. That's the only way I can describe what happened when the Wolf Brothers showed me the truth. Reality twisted, like looking through water, and suddenly I could see everything. I could see the scent trails that hung in the air, like colored ribbons, red for anger, black for evil, gold for innocence. The expedition campsite was covered in black ribbons, so thick they looked like smoke. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was seeing the golden trail that led away from camp. Thin and fading, but still there. Someone got away, whispered the youngest tourist. Kodiak said, 22 years old, clean scent. He ran when the judgment began. Where is he? The husky lifted her muzzle toward the tree line, half a mile east, dying of exposure. He'll be dead in an hour, if no one finds him. I looked at my rescue sled, then back at the Wolf Brothers. This is the test, isn't it? This is my real choice. Yes, Kodiak said. Save the innocent, or let him die to keep our secret. Choose between your human loyalty and your true nature. My hands shook as I grabbed my gear. Emergency blankets, medical kit, chemical heat packs, everything I'd need to save a life. Jake, the Malamute said, if you save him, he'll tell people what he saw. About us. About what really happened here. And if I don't, you become one of us. You help us judge the guilty. You prevent the kind of suffering that innocents endure when monsters are allowed to live. I thought about Maria Gonzalez, the teacher I'd rescued from the avalanche. 3 years later, she'd been arrested for embezzling money from the children's lunch program. Thousands of kids going hungry so she could buy a new car. I thought about Tom Bradley, the volunteer firefighter. 6 months after his rescue, he'd been caught setting fires so he could play hero putting them out. 2 people died in the blazes. He started. Susan Chen, the nurse, found guilty of stealing drugs from the hospital and selling them to kids. 3 overdose deaths linked to her supply. 23 rescues. How many of them had I gotten wrong? You're asking me to let someone die, I said. We're asking you to choose wisely, Kodiak replied. The way you trained us to choose. The scent trail was getting fainter, golden ribbons dissolving in the wind like sugar in water. In 30 minutes, it would be too late to save the kid even if I tried. I looked at Kodiak, really looked at him. In the strange new vision the Wolf Brothers had given me, I could see his true form. Still dog-like, but larger, more intelligent, ancient. His scent was clean silver, like moonlight on snow. How long have you been watching me? I asked. Since you were 7 years old, he said. Since you found that injured puppy in the woods behind your house. The memory hit me like a physical blow. I'd been walking in the forest when I heard whimpering, a small dog, maybe part wolf, caught in a trap. I'd freed it, bandaged its leg, brought it home. My parents made me take it to the animal shelter the next day. That was you. That was me. You passed the first test that day, Jake. You showed compassion for something that could offer you nothing in return. We've been watching you ever since, testing me, teaching you, preparing you. Every dog you've ever owned, every canine partner you've worked with, they've all been us. Learning from you, showing you how to judge human character. You've been training for this your whole life. The golden scent trail was almost gone now. Maybe 10 minutes left. The kid, I said. What's his story? The husky closed her eyes, breathing deeply. College student, studying to be a social worker. Volunteers at a homeless shelter. Came on this trip because his rich friends paid for it. He tried to stop them when he realized what they were planning. And the others, the ones you killed, serial killers, Kodiak said simply, all of them. They'd done this before, in different countries, paid for hunting trips where the prey was human. The guides knew, took their money anyway. My hands clenched into fists. How many people did they kill? 47 that we know of. Men, women, children, homeless people, prostitutes, immigrants, anyone who wouldn't be missed. The golden trail flickered like a dying candle. 5 minutes, maybe less. I looked at my rescue sled, then at the 19 Wolf Brothers surrounding me. They weren't evil, I realized. They were trying to protect the innocent, the only way they knew how, by eliminating the predators. But that kid in the woods was innocent, clean, good, and he was dying. I have to save him, I said. Kodiak nodded slowly. I know. That's why we chose you, Jake. Because even when it costs you everything, you still choose to save the innocent. What happens to you? We disappear, go back to being legends and stories, wait for the next time we're needed, and you, go back to being a ranger. But you'll remember, you'll know what's really out there. And when you're searching for someone, when you have to decide who gets saved and who gets left behind, I'll choose wisely. The golden trail was almost gone. I had to move now or the kid would die. I looked at Kodiak one last time. Will I see you again, when you need us most? He said. We'll be there. I ran for my sled. I found Tommy Martinez, 300 yards from where the trail ended, curled up behind a fallen log with hypothermia setting in fast. His lips were blue, his breathing shallow, but he was alive. It took me 40 minutes to get him stable and loaded onto the rescue sled. By the time I made it back to the expedition camp, the Wolf brothers were gone. Just regular sled dogs now, cold and confused, whimpering for their dead masters. The search and rescue team arrived 2 hours later. 40 people with helicopters and snowmobiles, ready to handle a major incident. They found me giving Tommy medical attention, while 19 traumatized dogs huddled around a campfire. The official report blamed the deaths on equipment failure and exposure. The dogs had apparently broken free during a blizzard, and the humans had died trying to round them up. Tragic, but not unusual in the Alaska wilderness. Tommy's statement was dismissed as hypothermia-induced hallucination. Talking dogs, coordinated attacks. Clearly the stress of watching his friends die had caused a psychotic break. But I knew the truth. And Tommy knew too, even if no one believed him. 3 months later, I got a letter from him. He'd changed his major from social work to veterinary medicine. Said he wanted to understand animals better. Said he felt like he owed them something. The letter included a news clipping. Police in Seattle had found evidence linking the dead expedition members to a string of missing person cases across 3 countries. 47 victims, just like the Wolf brothers had said. I keep that clipping in my desk drawer, next to a photo of Kodiak and me after our first rescue together. Sometimes I take it out and look at both, trying to reconcile what I thought I knew with what I learned that night. The search and rescue calls still come, and I still respond. But now I pay attention to different things. The way my new dog, Summit, hesitates before certain tracks. The scents that make his hackles rise. The people he leads me toward, and the ones he leads me away from. Last month we got a call about a missing hiker in the backcountry. Rich businessman, from Texas, lost for 3 days. Summit picked up the trail easy enough, but then he stopped and sat down. Wouldn't go any further, no matter how much I encouraged him. I almost overruled him, almost forced him to continue the search. But then I remembered what Kodiak taught me about choosing wisely. The hiker's body was found a week later by another team. Natural causes, they said. Exposure and dehydration. Tragic, but these things happen. It was only later that I learned about the warrant for his arrest. Securities fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. Thousands of people lost their retirement savings because of him. Summit was waiting for me when I got home that night, sitting by the door with something in his mouth. A stick, I thought at first, but when I looked closer, I saw it was carved with symbols I recognized from that night at Wonder Lake. Athabascan hunting marks, a gift from old friends. I scratched behind Summit's ears and told him he was a good dog. His tail wagged once. Then he settled down by the fire, but for just a moment, in the flickering light, his eyes looked pale blue instead of brown. They say dogs are man's best friend, that they're loyal and faithful and true. They're right about that. The question is, loyal to what? Sometimes, late, at night, when the wind howls through the trees, I hear other sounds mixed in with it. Howls that are almost like voices, calling across the wilderness, reminding me that there are still monsters out there, and there are still those who hunt them. I whistle back sometimes, just to let them know I'm listening, that I remember, that when the time comes to choose between saving a life and doing what's right, I'll choose wisely, because that's what Kodiak taught me. That's what they all taught me. The pack is still out there, somewhere in the darkness, watching, waiting, judging, and I'm still here, doing what I've always done, saving the ones who deserve it, letting the others go, because now I know the difference. Now I can smell it too. My name is Linda Blackbird, and I need to tell you what really happened in Wind Cave. People think they know the story, that a therapy group got lost in the caves and had to be rescued, but that's not what happened, not even close. I was 38. Then, been a park ranger for 9 years. Before that, I was a psychiatrist. I know what you're thinking. Why would a doctor become a ranger? The truth is, I discovered something amazing about caves. They could help people remember things they'd forgotten. Terrible things that their minds had buried deep. Wind Cave is special. The Lakota people call it the breathing cave because air flows in and out like lungs. They say it's sacred, that the spirits of the dead whisper through the tunnels. I used to think that was just folklore. Now I know better. My office was a small cabin near the cave entrance. The walls were covered with thank you letters from patients. Over 150 people had come to me over the years, all carrying memories they couldn't reach. Childhood trauma, accidents, abuse, horrible things their minds had locked away to protect them, but I found a way to unlock those doors. The cave acoustics were perfect. I'd take small groups into the upper chambers, where the sound bounced off the walls in strange ways. Something about being underground, in the dark, with only the echo of your own voice. It opened pathways in the brain. People would remember things they'd forgotten for decades. Dr. Sarah Chen from the university called my work groundbreaking. She said I was changing how we understood memory and trauma. I was proud of that. I thought I was helping people heal. August 1975 was our busiest season. Tourists came from all over to see the cave. But that month, I had a special group, 6 people who'd all suffered terrible losses as children. They couldn't remember the details, just fragments that haunted their dreams. There was Tom, a 45-year-old teacher who'd lost his sister in an accident he couldn't recall. Maria, a nurse who had nightmares about fire, but couldn't remember any fire in her past. Robert, who woke up screaming but never knew why, and 3 others, all broken in ways their minds wouldn't let them understand. I just want to know what happened. Maria told me during our first session. I'm tired of being afraid of something I can't even remember. I promised them I could help. I had the equipment, the training, the perfect location. The cave would give them back their memories. Then they could finally heal. We started with simple sessions in the main chamber. I'd play specific sound frequencies, while they talked about their dreams and fears. The cave amplified everything. Their voices, their breathing, even their heartbeats. Within days, they were remembering things. Tom recalled the day his sister disappeared. Maria remembered the house fire that killed her parents. One by one, their buried memories surfaced. They cried, they screamed, but they also smiled. Finally, they knew why they'd been in pain for so long. This is incredible, Robert said after his breakthrough. It's like someone gave me back a piece of my soul. I was so proud of my work. 9 years of perfect results, not a single failure. Every patient left with their memories restored and their trauma understood. I thought I was the best memory therapist in the world. I should have wondered why I never failed. I should have asked why the cave seemed to know exactly what memories my patients needed to find, but I was too proud, too sure of my methods. The trouble started when we went deeper. The breakthrough came on August 15th. Tom had been talking about wanting to go deeper into the cave, to where the real voices were. I didn't understand what he meant, but the whole group was excited about it. They said they could hear whispers from the unmapped sections calling to them. I should have said no. My sessions were always in the safe, upper chambers where tour groups went, but my patients were making such progress. Tom had remembered his sister's last words. Maria could finally sleep without nightmares. They begged me to take them deeper, to the place they said was calling to them. Please, Dr. Blackbird, Maria said. There's something down there that needs to come out. We can all feel it. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I told myself it was professional curiosity. The lower chambers had different acoustics maybe. They'd be even more effective for memory work. We went down 400 feet, past the tourist routes, into tunnels I'd only seen on old maps. The air felt different there, thicker. It moved strangely, like the cave really was breathing. Our flashlights seemed dimmer, and our voices echoed in ways that didn't make sense. This is it, Tom whispered. This is where the voices are strongest. I set up my equipment in a small chamber. The walls were smooth, worn by centuries of wind and water, but there were marks on them, scratches that looked almost like writing. When I asked about them, Tom said they'd always been there, but I'd never seen them before. We started the session. I played the usual frequencies and asked them to focus on their recovered memories. But something was wrong. Their voices on my recorder played back different words than what they'd actually said. When Maria talked about her parents, the recording played her speaking in what sounded like Spanish. But Maria didn't speak Spanish. Did you hear that? I asked, playing back the tape. They all looked confused. Hear what? Robert asked. It sounds normal to me, but it wasn't normal. The voices on the tape were speaking in languages none of my patients knew, and they were having conversations with people who weren't there. On the recording, I could hear Tom talking to someone he called sister, but his sister had died 30 years ago. Maria was laughing with children who called her mama, but Maria never had children. The voices were clear, happy, loving, but impossible. I played the tape back again. This time, I heard my own voice saying things I didn't remember saying. I was telling someone about my childhood, about my grandmother's stories of the cave spirits. But I hadn't talked about my grandmother during the session. The equipment must be malfunctioning, I said. But my hands were shaking as I packed it up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those voices, those conversations with people who weren't there. I'd been running memory therapy for 9 years. My equipment never malfunctioned, ever. The next morning, Tom called me at 6 a.m. Dr. Blackbird, you need to come to the cave. Now, I found him at the entrance, fully dressed like he'd been there all night. His eyes were bright, excited. I've been talking to my sister, he said. She's down there, in the deep chamber. She's been waiting for me all these years. Tom, your sister is dead. No, he said, grabbing my arm. She's not dead, she's preserved. The cave kept her safe, just like it's keeping all of them safe. All the memories, all the people we've lost, they're all down there. I tried to explain that memories weren't people, that trauma could make us imagine things. But Tom wasn't listening. He was already walking toward the cave entrance. She wants to meet you, he said. She wants to thank you for bringing me back to her. I followed him down, telling myself I needed to help him work through this delusion. But as we descended into the unmapped sections, I heard something that made my blood freeze. Voices, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all talking at once, echoing through the tunnels. Children laughing, adults crying, elderly people telling stories. It sounded like a family reunion in the depths of the earth. Did you hear them now? Tom asked. I did, and that's when I found Maria. She was sitting in the chamber where we'd had our session, but she wasn't alone. She was having a conversation with empty air, speaking fluently in Spanish. Her face was lit up with joy as she talked to invisible children. Maria, I called. She turned to me with tears in her eyes. Dr. Blackbird, my babies are here, all 3 of them. They've been waiting for me. But Maria never had children. I knew her history. She was unmarried, childless, had dedicated her life to nursing. Yet here she was, speaking to children who didn't exist in a language she didn't know. That's when I saw Robert. He was deeper in the tunnel, kneeling beside what looked like a person lying on the ground. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't a person at all. It was a shape made of cave rock, roughly human-sized, and Robert was stroking its face like he was comforting someone. Robert, what are you doing? Taking care of my mother, he said. Without looking up, she'd been sick for so long, but she's getting better now. The cave is healing her. I shined my flashlight on the rock formation. It was just limestone, shaped by water and time, but Robert was treating it like it was alive, like it was his mother who died 20 years ago. That's when I understood. My patients weren't remembering their past. They were losing their present. Whatever was in this cave, it wasn't giving them back their memories. It was taking them away from reality entirely. I had to get them out. Now, getting them to leave was impossible. Every time I tried to lead one of them toward the surface, they'd panic. Maria screamed that I was trying to separate her from her children. Tom grabbed my arm so hard he left bruises, begging me not to make him abandon his sister again. You don't understand, Robert said, his voice desperate. They need us. They've been alone for so long. I managed to get back to the surface and called for help. But when the rescue team arrived, we couldn't find my patients anywhere. They'd vanished into the unmapped sections of the cave, areas so deep and twisted that even experienced cavers avoided them. The search lasted 3 days. We brought in equipment, dogs, expert cavers, nothing. It was like the earth had swallowed them whole. On the 4th day, I went back down alone. I knew those tunnels better than anyone. I'd been conducting sessions there for weeks. If anyone could find them, it was me. I found Tom first. He was in a chamber I'd never seen before, one that seemed to pulse with its own light. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor, perfectly still, eyes closed. He looked peaceful, like he was sleeping. "Tom," I whispered. He opened his eyes and smiled. "She's teaching me," he said. "All the things she learned after she died. Did you know the cave remembers everything? Every person who ever came here, every word they ever spoke. It's all preserved. Tom, we need to leave. Your family is worried." "My family is here," he said, gesturing to the empty chamber. "Can't you see them? Look harder." I looked. The chamber was empty except for us. But as I watched, shadows seemed to move on the walls, shapes that looked almost like people, shifting and dancing in the dim light of my flashlight. "The cave is showing you," Tom said. "It's sharing its memories with you. All the people who came here seeking healing, seeking connection, they're all still here." That's when I heard it, my own voice, echoing from deeper in the cave. But I wasn't speaking. I was down here with Tom, silent, listening, yet I could clearly hear myself talking to someone, discussing my therapy techniques, explaining how the cave helped people recover their memories. "That's from last week," Tom said casually. "The cave recorded everything. It's playing back your sessions." I left Tom and followed the sound of my own voice. The tunnel twisted and turned, leading me deeper than I'd ever gone. The air grew warmer, and there was a smell like old flowers and dust. I found the source of the voices in a massive chamber that opened up like a cathedral. The ceiling disappeared into darkness, and the floor was covered with smooth, worn stones that looked almost like grave markers. And there, in the center, I found what was left of Maria. She was alive, but changed. Her skin was pale as limestone, and her eyes reflected light like an animal's. She was sitting in a circle with 5 other people I didn't recognize, men and women in clothes from different decades, all with that same pale skin and glowing eyes. "Dr. Blackbird," Maria said, her voice echoing strangely. "Come meet my friends. They've been waiting to thank you." The others turned to look at me. One was a woman in a 1950s dress, another a man in overalls that looked even older, but their eyes were alive, intelligent, aware. "You're the memory keeper," the woman in the dress said. "You've been feeding us for years. I don't understand. Every person you brought here," the man in overalls explained, "every memory you helped them recover, it wasn't really theirs, it was ours. Memories from people who died in these caves decades ago. You were pulling them out of the stone and putting them into living minds." I backed away, but Maria stood up and walked toward me. "Don't be afraid," she said. "It's beautiful. Here, we remember everything now. Not just our own lives, but the lives of everyone who came before us. We're part of something bigger." "You're sick," I said. "All of you. This place is making you sick." "No," said a voice from behind me. I turned to see Robert, but he looked different too. Paler, thinner, with that same strange glow in his eyes. "We're preserved. Our memories, our personalities, everything that makes us who we are. It's all safe now. Protected. The cave is alive," Maria said. "It's been collecting human memories for centuries. Indigenous people who came here for visions, explorers who got lost, tourists who wandered too far. All of their experiences, their knowledge, their love, it's all stored in the stone. And you," the woman in the 1950s dress said, "you've been the best collector we've ever had. Your therapy sessions were perfect. You made people's minds open and receptive, ready to receive our memories. Then you brought them down here, where we could complete the process. I thought about all my patients over the years. 150 successful cases, perfect recovery rates. People who came to me broken and left whole. But now I understood what had really happened. The memories I helped them recover," I whispered. "They weren't their own." "Of course not," Robert said. "How could a living person remember something that happened to someone who died 50 years ago? But the cave knew their memories. It had been keeping them safe, waiting for the right minds to hold them. But what happens to my patients? To who they really were?" Maria smiled sadly. "That's the beautiful part. They become part of the collection. Their memories join with ours. They live forever, in a way. Perfect preservation of human experience." I dropped my flashlight and ran through the dark tunnels, following the faint current of air that led to the surface. Behind me, I could hear them calling, their voices echoing off the stone walls. "Dr. Blackbird, don't leave us. We need you. The cave needs you." But I kept running, stumbling over rocks, scraping my hands on the walls, until I finally saw the blessed light of day. I made it to the surface, but I couldn't escape what I'd learned. Every night, I lay awake thinking about my patients, not just the 6 who were lost, but all 150 people I'd helped over the years. Had I stolen their real memories and replaced them with the experiences of dead strangers? I started going through my files, looking for patterns. Mrs. Henderson, who'd recovered memories of a house fire. I found newspaper clippings from 1923 about a family who died in a fire in these same caves. Jimmy Watson, who remembered being lost in a blizzard as a child. There was a record of a boy who froze to death in Wind Cave in 1942. Every single recovered memory matched a real person who had died in or near the cave. I hadn't been healing. Trauma had been implanting the dying thoughts of the dead into the minds of the living. The worst part was my success rate. 9 years of perfect results. Every patient left feeling whole, healed, complete, but they'd left with someone else's memories, someone else's experiences. They'd gone home thinking they understood their past, but they were living with the ghosts of strangers. 2 weeks after losing my therapy group, I got a call from Dr. Chen at the university. "Linda, I have some disturbing news about your former patients." My blood went cold. What kind of news? They're exhibiting signs of false memory syndrome. Severe cases. The memories they recovered during your sessions, they're not matching any documented events in their lives. I sat down hard. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Henderson claims she remembers dying in a house fire in 1923. She can describe the experience in perfect detail. But Linda, she was born in 1935. Jimmy Watson insists he died in a blizzard in 1942, but he was born in 1951. They're not just confused, they're living as if they're other people entirely. Are they ... Are they okay? That's the strange part. Medically, they're fine, better than fine. Actually, their stress levels are lower than they've ever been. They seem genuinely happy, but they're not ... themselves anymore. After hanging up, I sat in my office staring at all those thank you letters. Letters from people who weren't really themselves anymore. People who'd traded their real, painful memories for the preserved experiences of the dead. That night, I heard them calling to me. I was trying to sleep when the voices started. Faint at first, like wind through the trees. But as I listened, I could make out words. Tom's voice, Maria's voice, Robert's voice, and dozens of others. All calling my name, asking me to come back to the cave. "Dr. Blackbird," Maria's voice whispered through my window. "We miss you. We need you to understand." I tried to ignore them, but the voices got louder. Soon I could hear them clearly, as if they were standing right next to my bed. "You're not a monster," Tom said. "You were helping us. You were preserving human experience." "Think about it," Robert added. "How many memories are lost forever? When people die, how much love, knowledge, wisdom just disappears. You were saving it." I got up and walked to my window. In the moonlight, I could see the cave entrance in the distance, and I could swear I saw shapes moving around it, people walking back and forth, as if they were waiting for something. "Come back," Maria called. "Let us show you the truth." I knew I shouldn't. Every rational part of my mind screamed at me to stay away, but I had to know. I had to understand what I'd really been doing all these years. I drove to the cave at 3 a.m. The shapes I'd seen from my window were gone, but the entrance felt different, warmer, like something was breathing inside. I took a flashlight and went down into the tunnels. I didn't have to go far before I found them. They were waiting in the first chamber. All of them, my 6 lost patients, and dozens of others I didn't recognize. People from different time periods, all with that same pale skin and glowing eyes. "Welcome back," said an elderly woman in pioneer clothes. "We've been hoping you'd return." "You're the memory keeper," said a young man in military uniform. "The most important person who's ever worked in these caves." Maria stepped forward. She looked more like herself now, less changed. "We want to show you something," she said. "The real work you've been doing." She led me deeper into the cave, to a chamber I'd never seen before. The walls were covered with what looked like photographs, but as I got closer, I realized they were moving. Thousands of scenes playing out. On the stone, people living, loving, dying, experiencing every moment of human existence. "This is the memory palace," Maria explained. "Every human experience that's ever happened in these caves is preserved here. Births, deaths, first loves, last words, moments of joy and terror, all of it saved forever." "But the people who owned these memories," I said, "what happened to them?" "They became part of something bigger," Tom said, appearing beside me. Their individual lives were just drops in an ocean. But here, they're part of the eternal collection of human experience. You've been feeding the palace, Robert explained. Every time you helped someone recover a memory, you were actually downloading experiences from the collection and uploading their own memories to replace them. It was perfect symbiosis. I stared at the moving images on the walls. Centuries of human life, perfectly preserved. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. But my patience, I whispered. They're real memories. They're real selves. They're gone, not gone, said the woman in pioneer clothes. Transformed, made eternal. Would you rather they lived 70 or 80 years and then disappeared forever, or become part of something that will last until the end of time? They showed me more chambers, each one filled with preserved memories. I saw the final thoughts of Native Americans who'd used the cave for vision quests, the last moments of explorers who'd gotten lost in the tunnels, the dying breaths of tourists who'd wandered too far from the marked paths. Every civilization that's ever existed, the military man explained, has lost most of its memories when its people died, but not here. Here, everything is preserved. And you, Maria said, taking my hand, you've been the greatest memory keeper in the caves. History, you found a way to harvest living memories and replace them with preserved ones. You created a perfect system. But it's wrong, I said. I stole people's identities. I replaced their real experiences with someone else's. Is it wrong to save a drowning person? Tom asked. Because that's what you did. You saved dying memories from disappearing forever. They surrounded me then. All of these preserved people. Decades of the dead. All perfectly conscious. All perfectly happy. They'd found a kind of immortality in the cave, and they were offering it to me. Join us, Maria said. Become part of the collection. Your memories, your knowledge, your dedication to preserving human experience, it could all be saved forever. And if I don't, then you go back to your life, Robert said. But you'll know the truth. Every night, you'll lie awake thinking about all the memories that are dying, all the human experiences that are being lost forever. You'll know you could have been part of something eternal. I looked around at the memory palace, at all these preserved lives. It was tempting, so tempting, to never lose another memory, never forget another moment, to be part of something that would last forever. But I thought about my real patients, the ones who'd gone home with someone else's memories. They might be happy, but they weren't themselves anymore. They were living lies, beautiful lies, but lies nonetheless. I need time to think, I said. Of course, Maria said, but don't take too long. The cave is patient, but it's also hungry, and there are so many memories out there that need to be saved. I left the cave that night, but I didn't go home. I couldn't. Instead, I drove to the park headquarters and wrote my resignation letter. I packed my files, my equipment, my 9 years of perfect success stories, and I walked away from Wind Cave. Forever. The official report said that 6 people had gotten lost in an unmapped section of the cave system. After a week of searching, the area was sealed off for safety reasons. The families were told their loved ones had probably fallen into an underground river and been swept away. Their bodies were never found. Dr. Chen called a few times, wanting to discuss my research. I told her I was taking a break from memory work. She seemed to understand. Losing patients like that would be traumatic for any therapist. But I couldn't really take a break, because even though I'd left the cave hadn't left me. It started small. I'd be walking down the street and suddenly remember things that had never happened to me. A woman's wedding day in 1952, a child's first day of school in 1967, a man's last conversation with his father in 1934. The memories were perfect, complete, as if I'd lived them myself. At first, I thought it was stress, guilt over my lost patients manifesting as false memories. But then I started knowing things I'd never learned. I could speak phrases in Lakota, though I'd never studied the language. I knew the names of every plant that grew near the cave, their traditional uses, their spiritual significance. The cave had given me a gift, or a curse. I couldn't tell which. I tried to start over in California, working as a regular therapist, helping people with normal problems, depression, anxiety, relationship issues, nothing involving memory recovery, nothing that might tap into whatever connection I still had with the cave. But my patients started having unusual dreams. Dreams of people they'd never met, places they'd never been. Dreams that felt more real than their actual memories. I realized I was still connected to the memory palace. Even 1,500 miles away, I was still somehow channeling the preserved experiences of the dead. Every person I tried to help became a conduit for the cave's collection of human memories, so I stopped practicing therapy altogether. I got a job at a library, thinking that would be safe. Books are just words on paper. They can't hurt anyone, but even that didn't work. Patrons would come to me asking for help, finding information, and I'd know exactly what they needed. Not because I was a good librarian, but because I could access the memories of every person who'd ever researched that topic. The cave's collection included librarians, scholars, researchers from across the decades. Their knowledge was my knowledge now. I tried to fight it. I moved to different cities, took different jobs, avoided anything that might trigger my connection to the cave. But it was useless. The memory palace had claimed me, just like it had claimed all the others. The difference was that I was still alive, still myself. I retained my own memories alongside the borrowed ones. I could choose which experiences to access and which to ignore. I was the perfect memory keeper, fully human but connected to the eternal collection. That was 5 years ago. Now I live in a small town in Montana, working as a night janitor at a hospital. I chose the job carefully. Night shift, minimal human contact, simple tasks that don't require accessing the cave's memories, but I can't escape what I am. Every night, as I mop floors and empty trash cans, I can hear them calling to me. Not just my 6 lost patients, but all of them. Centuries of preserved human experience, asking me to come back, to help them add to their collection. And the worst part, I'm starting to think they're right. Every day, people die, and their memories die with them. First loves, last words, moments of perfect joy and terrible sorrow, all of it lost forever. How many amazing stories disappear when someone takes their final breath? How much wisdom, knowledge, and beauty vanishes from the world? The cave offers a solution. Imperfect, morally questionable, but a solution nonetheless. The memory palace preserves what would otherwise be lost. It gives a kind of immortality to human experience. I keep my resignation letter on my desk, next to a bus ticket back to South Dakota. Some nights, I pick up the ticket and think about returning to Wind Cave, about resuming my work as a memory keeper, about helping the cave preserve more human experiences before they are lost forever. Other nights, I think about the families of my lost patients, about all the people walking around with someone else's memories, living someone else's life, about the ethical implications of what I was doing, even if I didn't understand it at the time. But I also think about Mrs. Henderson, who called me last month. She's happy now, she said. For the first time in her life, she understands her past and feels complete. She doesn't know that her memories belong to a woman who died in 1923, and maybe that doesn't matter. She's living a full, joyful life with experiences that feel real to her. Is that wrong, or is it a kind of gift? I don't know the answer. I may never know. But I keep the bus ticket, just in case. Because somewhere, in the depths of Wind Cave, there's a memory palace full of human experiences waiting to be shared. And there are still people out there whose memories are fading, whose stories are being lost to time. Maybe, someday, I'll go back. Maybe I'll resume my work as a memory keeper, helping to preserve what would otherwise be forgotten. Or maybe I'll find another way to serve the cause of human memory, one that doesn't require stealing people's identities. Until then, I wait, and I listen, and every night, I can hear the cave breathing, patient and eternal, preserving the memories of the dead while the living world forgets. The memory palace is still there, still growing, still calling, and I'm still its keeper, whether I want to be or not. My name is Linda Blackbird, and this is what really happened in Wind Cave. Make of it what you will.